So we understood that these training programs varied greatly across Europe, and there was actually an effort of several organizations within WONCA, particularly EURACT, to try to give guidance of the core subjects, the theoretical subjects that should be lectured to residents. And the reason why we are interested in that is because we think this is really key for doctors, because we want to have training programs that actually match their needs and their expectations, but also for patients, because we are living in a world that is changing, and it's changing greatly and quite rapidly as well. And as we have discussed, we are now facing challenges in communication, in digital, that we didn't have before. So, of course, these skills need to be incorporated in training programs as well. And another issue is also, and going back to the topic of equity, is that patients are moving between countries. We have migration, the new migration challenges, but also the classic migration challenges that we had before. And doctors are also moving between countries, and they are moving from a country sometimes where they actually train to a new country where they are working, and the training program is actually different. So if we want to try to get some uniformity and some kind of baseline program or core program, we need to think about all this together. So the vision would be, the aim would be to manage and to develop equitable training curricula, core subjects, core topics that we'd recommend to have as theoretical lectures across Europe in order to give GPs a better starting point, and of course, with aim of providing better and safer care for patients as well. So this is an overview of the project. I will focus for this presentation on Workstream 3, which is the research proposal, but I thought it would be nice to give an overview of the bigger picture of the project. So in order to try to identify these core subjects, we defined 3 different work streams. One of them is actually, where are we now? Because we don't really know which are the theoretical core subjects in different countries across Europe. There is some work that has been done, but not detailed to the point of knowing what is currently taught in each one of these countries. And the third work streams would be about where do we want to go? And for that, obviously, it's important to listen to young GPs and to understand what they would like to have on their curricula, or which are the educational needs that I think they need. But at the same time, we also need the perspectives of more senior general practitioners, specialists, who actually work or have worked for several years and understand which are the skills that are really important as a GP. So these are the 3 work streams. And the way we are planning to tackle it is about the first work stream, which is about identifying what is currently done. The methodology that we propose is mostly a process mapping approach, which would imply going back to the training programs, to the countries where there are training programs or formal training programs, and try to list which are the core lectures or core theoretical modules that are taught. Of course, we know, and this is something that would be really interesting to discuss, in some countries there are not such programs or such defined programs, and in some other countries, and this is quite common concern, there are no national programs. There are programs that work in different regions. I know that, for instance, in Italy, it's a quite diverse program across the country. So we would do a process mapping and also complement it with a semi-structured interviews with national experts. And then we have the 2 work streams with young GPs and also with specialists. I will just give you a short overview of what we have done so far with young GPs. So this is very recent work. So we did a mini Delphi in the last BDGM forum in Torino a couple of weeks ago. I know you are mostly familiar with Delphi, but just to give a small overview. So Delphi basically consists on setting up a group of experts and propose them with a challenge. And in this case, our challenge is which are the key lectures that you'd like to have or you think it's important that to have as a trainee. So we set up the challenge and we asked the young GPs, and they came up with a list of proposals of priorities, and they have ranked them. And we did this interactively. So we asked the first list, they came with the topics, they ranked it, and then we gave them the overall result and said, Do these results match your expectations? Shall we go for another round? Let's discuss it again. Let's discuss it again. So this is the typical Delphi. We used a mini Delphi, which was slightly different because between rounds, we actually discussed a little bit with them, which is something that you shouldn't do in a Delphi. Or it's not part of the classic Delphi methodology. And we did something else. We also give them stimulus to think between rounds. So when we first asked which are the topics that you think you should have, we gave them first the image of the WONCA tree and said, just keep in mind that this is what WONCA says is important. These are the overall things competencies that we think are important. Just keep it in the back of your mind. And they came up with their topics. In the second round, we gave them the CANmeds framework, which I will explain a little bit more. So this is from the Canadian Association of Physicians. And while the WONCA tree is more about, I wouldn't say just technical, but it's more patient-focused in a way, the CANmeds has a broader approach because it considers that a family physician should also be, or could also be, a scholar, a leader, a collaborator in so many ways, a good communicator, etc. So it gives another dimension. So just told them, think about it and just give us your revised list of priorities. And in the third round, we also brought the core values of family medicine, which is something that's quite strong in the WONCA agenda right now as well. So I'm showing you the preliminary results of what they said. So this was a group of 25 residents across Europe. As you can see, they were distributed by quite evenly in different years. We only had one specialist with, more than 5 years. So most of them were young GPs, and they came for a range of countries. And after the 3 rounds, this is what they came with, using the estimate, talk, estimate, or mini Delphi approach. So they said they would like to have a module on evidence-based practice, and that means knowing where to look for guidelines, how to appraise the evidence in guidelines, and how to best use it in daily practice. They talked a lot about, and this was ranked by them by priority, they talked a lot about communication and ethics and how to establish a good relationship with patients. The third one was about the biopsychosocial model, knowing more about, and as Anne mentioned as well, the importance of social determinants of health and how to get this information in the consultation about the background of the patient and how to incorporate this in the decisions. The fourth one is about the diagnostic skills. So this would be a more technical one, and I think this is one of the challenging ones because one of the things that they asked is they would like to have practical lectures on the most common, theoretical lectures on the most common health problems and saying this is how we approach a patient with otitis or amygdalitis or tonsillitis. But here, of course, priorities would need to be defined because these cannot be incorporated in the curricula as a whole. One of the concerns was also about knowing techniques to manage better their time and their organization and prevent burnout, and also how to manage their practices, which is a concern in some countries where the family doctor needs to be able to organize the practice itself. Then they talked about other things like having an overview about how the health system works in general, which is something that sometimes they are not familiar with, how the overall system works, and how can we manage continuity of care, training about how to implement quality improvement activities, and to keep in mind the community-oriented care, which links to the holistic and biopsychosocial model as well. And finally, they talked about having formal training on how to better achieve patient education, which is also linked to communication, being able to convey the right message and to make it efficient when educating patients and partnering with patients, and how to best approach end-of-life care and home visits. So this is what they came. And what was interesting for us was to see that actually, while most of these topics land on or can somehow fit the WONCA tree and the CANmeds, some of them are not there and are things that we really acknowledge as important, such as patient education, evidence-based practice, and self-management and burnout prevention. So this is what we got, this is what we heard from trainees. These are unpublished results. We are still writing it because this was 3 weeks ago, so we are just analyzing or reanalyzing the data. And the next logical step for us would be, of course, to listen to the other side, which are specialists and experienced GPs. So the methodology that we'll be proposing for that is not going to be a mini Delphi now, and we can discuss why we went for a mini Delphi. There are several reasons why it's easier to do it in a presential meeting, let's call it like that. But for family doctors, our plan is to run an online Delphi and identify national leaders in Europe that could recruit a range of 20 to 50 participants per country, and again, do the same methodology, going back to them and say, what would you think would be interesting to have as a key lecture, as a key topic during residency training, and try to go for 3 rounds to define priorities. So what do we want to do with this? So the bigger aim of this is actually, we know there's a lot of work that has been done on this as well, by EGPRN and by EURACT, and we are having these conversations with EGPRN and EURACT. And we also think that because the world is changing so much, that it's time to take a step back and rethink it and maybe adapt it somehow, and maybe, I would say likely, probably, keep a lot of it as well. So by the end of this work, we hope to have both young doctors and specialist perspectives, and we want to compare these expectations with what is actually done. And hopefully we want to get the missing piece of the puzzle to try to improve curricula. And the bigger picture for this, of course, would be the dissemination of these results. And this links, I think, very well with the Professor N conversation talk before, because our aim is not just to share this with the classic academic community in papers, conferences, and meetings, but also to try to get these as white paper reports that can be understood by organizations and by institutions that can eventually be used to inform their training curricula, but also with patients, which we think that must have a say in this as well, and would be lovely to share this with them and hear their thoughts as well. So this is our proposal, and my final disclaimer is that this work is part of my award as a WONCA scholar, and it's one of the work streams that we are developing in the next 2 years. So I think it's all, and if you have any questions.